Hello, my name is Tyler Wells. I am putting together my video post for this week and just want to let you know this is the first time I've ever done anything like this or recorded a video of myself. So bear with me. Anyway, we were asked to watch How to Fix a Broken School, Lead Fearlessly, Love Hard. Spoken by, I'm not even sure I know how to pronounce her name, but Clayette Wyman. And kind of talk through how she was able to use some of the things we're learning, in our writing class. So she starts with a kind of a catchy opening in the way that she kind of starts off with a story. She doesn't give a whole lot of information, so you're kind of immediately kind of like, what's next? And kind of, so you're immediately kind of drawn in, like, I need to pay attention to what's going on because I got to hear the end of this story. And she does so with kind of a little bit of dramatic fashion. She's kind of talking slowly. She's got pauses in her speech to kind of force you to, like, okay, come on, like that kind of that attention span, attention getter. Um, so it's clear that she's got some passion. She's definitely got some gumption behind what she's saying and the things she's talking about. So right off the bat, right out the intro, you're kind of starting with a kind of the groundwork that says, hey, look, you're going to want to pay attention. So as far as kind of a catchy opening, she's definitely got that down and she's working with it, specifically because I'm sure this topic isn't exactly something super exciting. Sounds like maybe the people in the audience are probably other school staff, maybe other principals, superintendents, something of that nature. They keep panning back to the audience and kind of the way they're nodding their head and kind of in agreement with a lot of what she's saying. Just kind of goes to indicate that obviously they kind of know a little bit of what she's talking about. She kind of moves on. She seems to know kind of the verbiage, like I said, with the audience in mind. It sounds like they're superintendent or staff or school employees to begin with. So when she's kind of speaking, she's kind of talking in a general enough kind of vernacular, so that even someone like I can understand what she's saying. But as she's talking, like, people are like nodding their head, like, oh yeah, I've been there, done that, and so she definitely knows her audience. I was particularly impressed with the evidence that she brought forward when kind of supporting what she was saying. She had turnaround statistics for each one of these metrics, talking about the writing and geometry standards and how they were being met, and then how they've grown by 117 and 107%. To a certain degree, I feel like that might have been a slight misrepresentation or made it look better than it had, because if you've got 9 out of 10 kids that are meeting the bar at that point, and you grow that by 107%, all of a sudden now you have 19 kids. And so that didn't, I kind of saw through a little bit of those statistics a little bit, but needless to say, growth was the point that she was making. So she did so well and presented that in a way that was impressive. As far as a satisfying closing, I mean, you can't really get much better than Clayette's kind of emotional. Like, it was obvious that maybe she wasn't super confident with herself going in, and that this was a difficult conversation, or speech to give. And then at the end, she kind of broke down into some emotions, like, thank you, Jesus, So that definitely kind of, by that point, you're now rooting for her. You're definitely feeling like you're in her shoes, and she definitely was able to summarize all that she had talked about fairly well, in a very impactful way, by breaking down the bullet points and kind of reminding you of the slogans that she had implemented to get where she was. And so honestly, it just kind of was framed with the perfect, like, all it is about love, and it just was a very effective way to remind people what was said, what was talked about, but at the same time, it was dramatic and satisfying, very satisfying. As far as a speech goes, I did feel like she was yelling at us the whole time. She was very kind of monotone and very kind of direct with everything she was saying. It sounded like everything had the same caliber of um, stress and impact that she was trying to make. And for that, as a oral presentation, was a little difficult to. It was a little distracting, I should say. I was more that there were times where I was focusing on that rather than what she was saying. And I felt that if maybe she would have used a little bit more of the peaks and valleys of her vocal range, she probably could have held a little more attention. And then on top of that, it could have emphasized some of the points she was making rather than having everything being yelled at me. Um, Aside from that, as far as this is a writing class, naturally you're not going to be able to yell through a written piece, and so that probably doesn't have a ton of relevance to what we're talking about here. Um, of course, all these ums are probably great, and so just keep that in mind. This is the first time I've ever video recorded myself. Lastly, what do we find effective about her talk, and what changes would you suggest? As as I said with the kind of the oral presentation, there's definitely some things there that could be improved with like the tone of her voice and the delivery. However, as far as kind of content, there was a couple times where she had either said the wrong word or stumbled over words. And I would imagine that, you know, if this was written out and if this was something that she memorized, that maybe she could have done a little bit better in that regard. Um, but as far as like the flow of the process, I would say that the intro seemed long. It seemed like the slogans is where the meat of the conversation started, and that was like halfway into the video, which probably isn't bad. But when you're kind of building it up, I understand that she had some backstory to get to. Maybe she could have found a way to condense that backstory so we're brought up to speed in a quicker fashion. So that way, when she kind of moved into the bullet points, it felt a little more natural. It seemed like we had a large backstory to get to the meat and potatoes of what it was she actually did to turn these schools around. And so there was a minute or two there where I was like, okay, where are we going? Like, what is happening here? I could see how in a written piece that would be difficult if your first paragraph kind of rambles and kind of bounces around from topic to topic, or um, doesn't really have the targeted leadership, you know, in this way. So as far as suggestions goes, I would recommend that maybe the first portion of her speech be considered to be revised in a way that kind of brings us up to speed in the same to the same caliber, but then lets us into the meat and potatoes rather quickly. So anyway, thank you for your time. This is already an 8-minute video, so I'm going to bounce out. Thank you for your time, and feel free to leave comments.